Good evening. I will now call the February 13th, 2024 meeting of the Ben Lapine Schools Board of Directors to order. I'd like to introduce our participants this evening. To my immediate right is Vice Chair Marcus LeGrand, Director Amy Tatum, Director Keena Chadwick, Director Carrie McPherson Douglas, Director Cameron Fisher, and Director Shirley Olson. To my immediate right is Superintendent Stephen Cook, Deputy Superintendent Laura Nordquist, and Board Clerk Janet Bojanowski. I am Melissa Barnes-Delakia, Chair of the Board. We also have Abby Wydra from Caldera High School and Honey Walk from Mountain View High School joining us from our Student Voice Council. And we have Hannah Westfall and Caitlin Oldham joining us for ASL interpretation. A Spanish interpretation of the meeting is being provided on the BLS School Board YouTube page. In order to ensure safety and the ability for the board to focus on its business, we asked that all in the audience adhere to the board meeting attendee expectations. This includes being seated and holding signs under chin level. If there are no available chairs, individuals may wait in the lobby until one is available. Thank you. I will now ask you to stand, remove your hats, and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll now move to item 3, which is review of the agenda. To focus us, our agenda is focused on Goal 1, which is our work to ensure academic achievement for all of our students. And we will have a report today on our ELA adoption. And then on Goal 4, which is our operational goal and ensuring that our operations are aligned to the mission, vision, and goals of the district. And we will get to hear about the Ben Senior High facility plan, as well as the proposal for a local option levy. Just a note that the January 9, 2024 meeting minutes have been updated and uploaded into the board packet. Beyond that, Dr. Cook, are there any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes to the agenda.
Thank you. Fellow board members, are there any changes to the agenda? Hearing no requests for changes to the agenda, we will proceed as it was noticed. We will now move into item number 4, which is our district recognitions. And our first is our recognition of our incredible school resource officer and deputies. I am going to ask.
Yeah, no, let me, I can do it.
Or the recognition.
Let's do the presentation and then we'll do the resolution.
Okay. We're going to start with our presentation, and then we're going to have a resolution read by Director McPherson Douglas.
So if we could get Scott Bojanowski and Kayla Martin to come up here.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I just want to thank you all for having us here. I know normally we have our champion for students, but this seemed very fitting. It is School Resource Officer Appreciation Day this Thursday, and so we wanted to invite our entire team here to get them in front of you. Next slide, please. Oh, do one? Okay, we'll just go off script. So NASRO, which is the National Association of School Resource Officers, they declared National SRO Day to be February 15th, starting in 2022, and we wanted to make sure that we recognized our officers and deputies. Sorry, talking into a mic is my nightmare, so I always go as far away as I can. So yeah. Sorry, I got a little off script there, but yeah, we just wanted to make sure that we got them in front of you. I know it's really valuable time for you guys, and we don't always get them together in a group. And so we're gonna introduce our team and then just highlight our program, very high level. Next slide, please. Okay, So our leadership is Sergeant Pacheco, who's in the back. We're gonna have them wave as we go. And then Lieutenant Husband from Deschutes County Sheriff's Department. And then we have Deputy Woods and Deputy Karpstein. Next slide. And then we have Officer Cashman Caceres. And Officer Conkey and Officer Smelzer weren't able to join us, but we also have Officer Russell here in attendance. Okay, next slide.
So we wanted to spend a minute to talk about why we have the SRO program. And as you know, safety there's a lot of factors that go into keeping the school safe. We use a layer approach. So for example, we have like secure vestibules. When you come into our schools or in our buildings, you have to check in with an ID, you have to be buzzed in. Having our SRO program is another layer of safety. It's a partnership that we have with the county, with the Sheriff's Office, and with the City of Bend Police Department. We follow the NASRO triangle. And so NASRO, as Kayla mentioned, is the National Association for School Resource Officers. We ask that our officers are educators, informal counselors, and then they also are providing their law enforcement duties as part of our partnership in keeping schools safe. Next slide, please. Some of the criteria we use when selecting which officers should become SROs, it's a collaborative process. So we actually get to sit on the hiring panel with the leadership at each agency to help select the SROs. All these officers and deputies, they've already been established as law enforcement officers in their agency for a certain period of time. So usually at least 3 years, they've already kind of done their patrol time. And then they actually have to apply and go through a hiring process within their organization for the special duty. And some of the things we're looking for when selecting SROs is they have strong relationship building skills, they're excellent communicators, they have trauma responsive skills, and then they're culturally aware. So they understand what they're in the schools to do is to build relationships. And then we talk about that ability to flip the switch. So 99.9% of the time they're in there building relationships and keeping our schools safe. But we also want them to have that tactical ability if they ever need to go into a situation to where they need to go into that protective mode and do their job and move into protecting the school from like an active shooter event. And so those are the kind of the criteria we look at when helping the law enforcement agencies select our SROs.
Okay, so we're not going to read all of the quotes that we compiled, but we did partner with our communications team, and you guys will see some more information kind of on social media throughout the week. We had Becca Berta, our Assistant Director of Communications. She reached out to schools to see the impact that SROs had on our students. We selected just 6 of our favorites. Topaz Swan, which we decided was an amazing name. I think that just sums everything up, like a father figure, the nicest SRO we've ever had. Seeing the impact that the SROs have on our students, it was really amazing for us to just get all of that sent back to us. And this isn't like a full program review, but we just really wanted to highlight how amazing our partnership is with them. So throughout the week, so SRO Day is going to be on Thursday, a lot of our schools are hosting events at their either their lunches or they're doing their own separate assemblies to show their SRO appreciation. But we had one school that went very above and beyond, Bend Tech Academy. So we want to invite some of their students up. They conducted a project and they're going to speak a little bit about it and tell us what they did.
All right. Hi, my name is Gabe Miller. Most of you guys know me. I'm a senior at Bend Tech, and I am the production manager. So for the shirts and stuff, that was my department. Oh, yeah.
I'm Victor Karstein. I'm a junior. I am the co-manager of the production.
My name is Faith Rue. I'm a junior in the Medical Academy, as well as my school's Events and Fundraisers Coordinator. We are here today to represent our school support to our Bend Lapine resource officers. With our business leadership, we were able to produce shirts, buttons, and cards, which my fellow classmates have. One of our other juniors, Luke Harris, designed these custom shirts himself. Thanks to our business leadership production team, Thanks to our business leadership production team, we were able to make this all possible. We would like to appreciate and thank all of our fellow SROs for their bravery and integrity. We hope that you enjoy our custom-made products, and thank you so much for your service.
So this time, we'd like to ask all the SROs, I know they hate this part, but all of our school resource officers to come on up front.
While they're up there? Oh, all right. Just stand in a fabulous line. Just follow the shape, the natural shape. I'm sorry.
Thank you. We would like to read a proclamation read by Director McPherson Douglas.
Thank you. I have the pleasure of reading this proclamation. First, I want to say Justin's quote is my favorite. He's there to be awesome. I love that. So this is the School Resource Officer Appreciation Day proclamation for 2024. Whereas school resource officers in Ben Lapine schools provide an essential bridge between youth, families, and law enforcement in supporting student safety, wellness, inclusion, and belonging. Whereas the SRO program embraces a triad concept of school-based support, informal counseling, and education and healthy choices, and law enforcement to support the students and communities they serve. Whereas SROs are trained to counsel, educate, and protect school communities, and as such, lead by example and promote a positive image of law enforcement to children and the communities within Ben Lapine schools. Whereas school resource officers are essential members of the Ben Lapine schools education community in the pursuit of keeping schools and students safe. Now, therefore, the Ben Lapine Schools Board of Directors hereby proclaims February 15th as School Resource Officer Appreciation Day. Thank you.
And then we have some goodie bags from BTA and from the district for our SROs. Thank you.
Hey, Joe, can you say some nice words?
You told me I wasn't going to have to talk. You promised me.
Nevertheless.
Real quick, I just want to say thank you to everybody. We have the best student, staff, and administration in the world, and we can't do our job without you. Obviously, that includes our school board as well. We need that support to work together. I've said it in the past at past trainings, but I've never seen a well-functioning team work without positive, good, loving relationships. So thank you guys for building that, helping us to grow and help you. We really love it.
Oh, good. Another picture?
You want one more picture? Okay.
Oh, yeah, you get down in front.
How about a picture with the BTA students that made all of it?
Yep, come on up, guys.
And the principal. Come on. Yes, please.
All right, one more round of applause for everybody. Thank you.
Amy is. Thank you so much. We'll now move to item 4B, Resolution 1960, Classified Employee Appreciation Week, read by Director Amy Tatum.
Whereas the education of youth is essential to the future of our community, state, country, and world, and whereas classified employees are the backbone of our public education system, and whereas classified employees work directly with students, educators, parents, volunteers, business partners, and community members, and whereas classified employees support the smooth operation of offices, the safety and maintenance of buildings and property, and the safe transportation, healthy nutrition, and direct instruction of students. And whereas our community depends upon and trusts classified employees to serve students, and whereas classified employees with their diverse talents and true dedication nurture students throughout their school years, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Directors for the Ben Lapine Schools proclaims March 4th through 8th, 2024 to be Classified Employee Appreciation Week, and be it further resolved that the Board of Directors for Ben Lapine Schools strongly encourages all members of our community to join in this observance, recognizing the dedication and hard work of these individuals.
Thank you. I will look for a motion to approve Resolution 1960.
I make a motion to approve Resolution 1960.
Second.
Thank you. Vice Chair LeGrand has motioned and Director Olson has seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Motion is passed. And we did not do a vote on 4A. However, it looks to be that we have consensus, and therefore we're not going to do that formality. But very much am excited about both our school resource officer and deputy recognition day and recognizing our classified employees this week.
And if I may, we have leadership of their union, both sitting in the back, trying to hide behind people back there. So if Jen Groth and Debbie Christian would stand up, please. Thank you both for being here tonight. We know really it's just because you missed being in this room and bargaining. It's a problem.
Oh, my goodness. All right, we are now moving on to item number 5, which is our Student Advisory Council report.
Hello, my name is Abby Wydra. I'm a senior at Caldera High School. I'm involved in student government, serving as the position of the equity coordinator, where I'm in charge of seeing that all student council events through a lens of equity and fairness that extends to all groups at Caldera. I joined the Student Voice Council to work alongside my peers to promote all sorts of more inclusive policies. So a year ago, members of this council were first welcomed to the school board and began our work with Ben Lapine Schools. Since that first meeting, we have been working to collaborate and evaluate current district practices such as the rotator period, cell phone practice, graduation regalia, and the honors diploma. The communication team has been assisting us to get out the word about who we are as a council and to ensure the school communities know who we are. We have had members attend every board meeting this school year and been able to present to the board on what we're working on. Our presence has also allowed the board to connect with us directly about student perspective on various topics at meetings. This council also wants to work this year to help create a forecasting template that can assist students in choosing classes. We think that getting a better understanding about the classes through this could help students not need to drop classes, and perhaps this will increase attendance. In my experience at Caldera, when we're forecasting, students are expected to choose the classes that they would like to take in the following year according to a list that contains all of the course titles. We are hoping that with a template, students will gain a better understanding of what these classes will entail and what they're getting themselves into when they're signing up for these classes, and hope that this will increase attendance and students won't have to change their schedules. Finally, last Thursday, members of this council were invited to meet with the deputy superintendent candidates. The members that attended were impressed with both candidates and were able to pass on their feedback post-meeting. The students were excited to be involved in this process, and we hope we are utilized for more opportunities such as this.
Hello, my name is Honey Walk, and I'm the student body president at Mountain View. I joined the Student Voice Council in hope that our voices at MV would be heard and our ideas would get applied to our community quicker. As a member of Student Voice Council and a president of Student Council, I see challenges in how we as students appreciate our teachers and how we engage them adequately in the school community. A lot of students at my school do not take the time to understand the complicated lives of teachers. This was brought up in our last meeting, where we began brainstorming ideas to better support our staff. As student leaders, it is important to take a role to help make Ben Lapine schools as great as possible, and to succeed in making that possible, we need to make sure that the people who so closely affect the lives of children are in the picture. We would like to come up with ideas about how to create a culture and school spirit amongst the staff, and ways to show our support of the staff beyond just a Teacher Appreciation Week. I feel having only one designated week for teacher appreciation provides a base of forced appreciation, which could seem less genuine. We discussed that there should be more small acts throughout the years that show our care, and we think it would be much more consistent. As president, I have asked a lot from the teachers this year, and to show my appreciation, my team and I bought goodies and coffee for them. This small act was not hard to accomplish, but ended up being incredibly appreciated. I look forward to working with the council on this and maybe expand to the elementary and middle school so all the teachers in our district feel supported.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions for our Student Voice Council?
Thank you so much. I have a question about the, Abby, what you were talking about, the template or the forecasting information. Is this kind of a consensus in the council that for high schoolers that there's not, that folks are not getting enough information about classes, and so then they shift midstream or like a weekend or?
Yeah, so when we were presented with the idea of attendance, we were brainstorming ideas of how we can increase attendance, and myself and one other member came up with the idea of, like, you know, a lot of times kids are in classes that they don't want to be in at all, and especially at the start of the year and new semester, it can be really hard to get a schedule change. I know at Caldera, the counseling office is flooded with kids, and it can be really tough. So we're hoping with this like template that just has a little information about the class, kids can sign up for classes that they are really interested in, and they won't have to make a schedule change, and this hopefully will increase attendance.
So like a more robust course description?
Yes.
Got it. Great idea. Thank you.
I did attend the information night at Mountain View last week, and there's another one for all parents and kids at Lapine tomorrow night at 6. And I learned some things about forecasting that I didn't know. And I also discovered that the curriculum guides really do have a lot of information, but hardly anybody knows that. So they're not really accessed. So I think that's a great idea. And there are still people, and I have to say, I know a lot of parents don't know what forecasting means. So, and you are asked to fill out that form and sign it and have somebody take it home and have it signed. And the counselors review it, but you're right, it's very difficult, especially where there are lots of one semester classes. And it's quite a process. So good for you, that's great. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
I would also like to appreciate, Honey, your work appreciating teachers. I think that we've all seen, we're just emerging from negotiations, but it's just such a timely focus to make sure that our teachers feel appreciated. So thank you. All right, we will now move to item number 6, which is public comment. The board and district leadership value communication from students, families, staff, and community members as it helps to guide the work of Ben Lapine Schools. Public comment is just one of many venues available to ensure this connection. Members of the public may always submit thoughts, questions, or concerns to the board via email as well as in writing. And individual board members may make themselves available for phone, video, or in-person conversations. This said, I want to remind the public that while this is a meeting of the Board of Directors in public, it is not a meeting with the public. It is a meeting of the board to conduct district business. As such, the board will not respond to public comment made during tonight's meeting. Instead, issues may be recorded and referred to the proper staff person to follow up with you. We will now open for public comment and hear from stakeholders on topics in order that they appear on the agenda. Our policy is typically to allow up to 2 minutes per speaker until the time cap has been reached for that agenda item. We typically allow up to 10 minutes of comments per agenda item and 10 minutes of comments on non-agendized items as a whole, for a maximum of 45 minutes of public comment during a meeting. A timer is provided on the large screen and to our virtual attendees to ensure every speaker receives updates during the presentation on remaining time. If the speaker goes over time or if the speaker's message is not in adherence with our policies, for example, being personally directed, abusive, discriminatory, repetitive, or off-topic, I may ask the speaker to cease and terminate that speaker's privilege to address the board. At this time, we will hear from Chris Kuka.
Is this okay? Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of our classified staff. During a recent bargaining session with OACA, a district office director made a comment regarding classified staff that was disrespectful, arrogant, offensive, and to many of us who recognize the important and diverse roles classified staff provide to the families of our community. These colleagues provide important services to our school community by providing their children with something to eat, transportation to school, and by being other patient adults ready to support student learning. Classified staff are often the first Ben Lapine employee our community interacts with when they enter a school building or when they contact the district. Anyone who has ever worked in a school quickly learns who really runs a school, and it certainly is not a principal. Lastly, classified staff do important jobs that allow all Ben Lapine employees to trust that their paychecks are deposited, their TSPC licenses are current, and that technology for students and staff work as designed. Earlier this evening, a statement was emailed to each of the school board members, signed by their staff members, who also recognize and honor the roles classified employees play in the district. I hope that one day the actions of district office administrators will match the rhetoric used in tonight's board's resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I want to thank everyone, for your public comment tonight. Public comments that necessitate follow-up will be referred to the appropriate district staff member. Information on that work will be made available at a future meeting. We'll now move to our consent agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
And second.
Thank you. Director Tatum has moved. Director McPherson Douglas has seconded. Is there any discussion or request, not discussion, request to remove anything from the agenda? Hearing no requests for changes, I will call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. We'll now move to our action items for tonight. Our first action item is item 8A, and I will invite Paul Andrews, Superintendent of the High Desert Education Service District, to present.
Good evening. Thank you very much for having us here tonight. And I want to start by introducing, first of all, two of my board members who were placed on my board by you, and I thank you for that. I'm going to start with Carlos Perez, who is Vice Chair of the High Desert ESD Board of Directors, and Peggy Kincaid, past Chair. and also Anna Higgins, who is my assistant superintendent. Well, every year I get to come spend a little bit of time with you in February to talk about the High Desert ESD's local service plan. And one thing I love about working with the Ben Lapine Board is making yourselves available on Fridays for us to be able to go over any questions you have related to the LSP, and was able to meet with almost all of you this year, and I think the rest of you in previous years. And so I don't want to spend too much time going through what is in here. That was the purpose there, but I do want to make sure that I provide an opportunity to answer any questions you have, and just to also frame the notion of where the local service plan comes from. The state puts together the state school fund, and from that takes 4.5% off the top and gives it to the 19 ESDs and charges us with providing you with services that make sense to regionalize, makes sense due to economies of scale for us to do at more of a regional level. And for all of the districts in Crook and Deschutes counties, last night I was at the Crook County School Board meeting, last week I was at Sisters, and I'll be at Redmonds in a couple of weeks, working with each of the boards to say, is this the menu of services that works for you? And then we will go through a process over the next couple of months to talk about the specific budget items, what they will cost. That will culminate in our budget meeting that you have representation on in April, and then my board will approve in June. So I would be happy to go through any or all of this, but again, we had an opportunity to do that, but not everyone was able to meet with me at that time. So I'll open it up to questions if I could just start with that. If you want me to go into more detail, I'm happy to do that as well.
I'll just say, Paul, that I really appreciate the thought that that went into the menu of services, taking things out of the menu of services that were no longer being accessed, but also knowing that at any given time, if the districts needed that, there was a process to bring those back in, and just fully support. And I'm thankful for the work that you guys do and the services that we access that are really not just needs of Ben Lapine, but are the needs of our community in Central Oregon. And you provide such an important service in that area. And I'm thinking of things like Better Together and the culture of care, et cetera. And so just thank you for always thinking about what the needs are in our larger community and tailoring your services to that.
Very much.
I'll just briefly echo, I've had the pleasure of sitting on the budget committee for the last couple of years, and always really appreciate at those meetings you showcase a couple of the services that you provide. I wish that everyone got the opportunity to see them every year because they're incredible, and I always come back and talk about the long list, multi-page list of services that you all provide. So just thank you.
Thank you.
If there are no further questions or comments, I will look for a motion to approve the High Desert Education Service District 2024-25 Local Service Plan.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2024-2025 Local Service Plan.
I second.
Thank you. Director Tatum has moved. Director Fisher has seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no need for further discussion, we will move to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you so much, and thank you for being here and for serving as board members as well.
Thank you.
We'll now move to item 8B, and I will invite Julie Walker, our Elementary Director of Curriculum Instruction and Systems, to present.
All right, so I was here on January 9th and had the opportunity to speak with all of you about the Language Arts Curriculum Review Team. So we've had about 30 members that have worked really hard over the last 2 years to be able to bring a recommendation to you for our next K-5 elementary language arts program. And we did that when we were here on January 9th. We brought to you EL education, otherwise known as expeditionary learning, as a recommendation to the board to be our next language arts program. And so since I was here with you on January 9th, we were able to offer 2 community viewing events on January 24th and January 29th in our lobby downstairs. And so I just want to share a quick story about one of those events. So at one of those events, we had a parent that was there and was just, sharing her excitement about EL education and was just, hoping for that her daughter and her son would be challenged with this program. And my members of the team and I kind of walked her through different things that were happening. It happened to be a bargaining night as well. So we were sitting in the lobby, and one of our teachers, Mary Jane Schulte, who's a second grade teacher at Ensworth, she came through the front doors and she's like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you're here. I can't believe you're here. I got to tell you something. I got to tell you something. You've got to see these pictures that I have." And she was bringing the performance task that her students had completed on a comparison of schools around the world. And she's like, "You wouldn't believe what my kids are doing. They're writing pages and pages. They've never done this before." And she had video, and the parent is sitting here, and she's showing the video of the work and the things that the kids did and just her excitement around what's to come. And so I think that is really just the excitement that is echoed in all of the people that stopped by to look at the materials and the excitement of our teachers moving forward. So I'm here tonight to ask for an action item for approval of EL education as our next program.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Julie? Student Voice Council, do you have any questions about our EL adoption? Right. I have a comment. I'm just thrilled about this adoption, and not only for the reading piece, but how it ties into our goal 2 of passion, purpose, and plan for their future, and how purposeful EL education is in providing that thread through the curriculum. And so it hits so many boxes. I'm just really excited that was where we landed.
Well, first, thank you for being here. Appreciate it very much. My question is this, based on the events, what feedback were you giving from various people or stakeholders who were at that meeting?
At the last meeting that we were at, or the 2 community viewing
The
events?
community events, thank you.
Most, I think, positive. Not a lot of written feedback. A lot of people walking by, stopping and giving, and just looking at materials and just commenting on the quality of the authentic literature that is going to be a part of the program. Commenting on just excited for the knowledge building piece and how there's a lot more connections to content. So that was really the feedback that we received.
If there are no further questions or comments, I will look for a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve the ELO curriculum adoption.
I second the motion.
Thank you. Vice Chair LeGrand moves, and Director Chadwick seconds for the adoption of EL education as the language arts curriculum for grades K through 5. I will now call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
I would just, excuse me, I would just like, Julie, I know you will be acknowledging all the people that worked through these last 2 years for this adoption. It was a significant amount of time and effort and thought. Please thank them for us also.
Absolutely.
Thank you for acknowledging that. First, I'm going to say motion passes unanimously. And yes, I think that it's really a hallmark that doesn't perhaps get publicized as much as it should be, which is whenever we are doing things like a curriculum adoption, or when we're making big changes to our grading system, Those are 2-year processes where people are coming together, a large cohort, they're doing those field studies and testing. And so there's just, and getting the community input. And so there's just so much thought that goes into the process in Ben Lapine schools. It's really impressive, and thank you for leading that.
Thank you.
We'll now move to item 8C with Superintendent Cook.
Thank you, Chair Barnes-Delakia. This item is specific to House Bill 2009 that was passed during the 2023 long session. This bill includes provisions that creates a school support fee to be paid by school districts by businesses who are located in enterprise zones, and in that location in enterprise zones, it provides them property tax exemptions. This school support fee would be incorporated in both a standard enterprise zone, which is kind of also known as the the urban zone, and also in long-term rural enterprise zones. These support fees are a payment in lieu of property taxes that only apply to extending their property tax exemption during that time. So it would be years 4 or 5 in the urban zone, and it's years 6 through 15 in the long-term rural zone. We are required to pass some form of exemption on this. Our recommendation to the school board is that we would set that school support fee at the lowest rate legally allowed, which is 15% of the amount that qualifying businesses would have otherwise paid in property taxes. So for example, if the business was going to pay $10,000 annually in property taxes, the school support fee that they would be paying in year 4 and 5 in the urban zone and in years 5 through 17 in the long-term, 6 through 15 in the long-term zone would be equivalent to $1,500. There's been a lot of research in this process, and the fact that we are responsible for assessing that fee, we collect that fee, and then we are funded from the state school fund. That carve-out is coming from that fee, and so we believe that this is the right move for our community. We believe it's the right move to balance the needs of the community with the needs of the school district, and I'm glad to answer any questions you might have. One thing that's important to note, passing of this right now does not enact any fees until the year 2027, but those fees are very important to the community, to economic development, and those agreements have to be in place for businesses to receive those exemptions over the long term. And so we would not see money from this for at least 3 years.
Are there any questions? All right, if there are no questions, then I will look for a motion.
I move to adopt the resolution setting the school support fee at 15% for the Bend Enterprise Zone and the Deschutes County Rural Enterprise Zone.
I second.
Thank you. Director Tatum has moved. Director Fisher has seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no need for further discussion, I will move to a vote. All in favor say aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We will now move to our reports, and we will lead with Renee Alexander from BBT Architects, who will speak to us about the Bend Senior High School design project.
Good evening. Renee Alexander, BBT Architects. I'm the owner and architect at BBT. So glad to be here again to give you an update on the Bend Senior High modernization. Principal Reese is here too to help answer any questions and provide any more additional feedback to maybe what I'm sharing. So glad to have him here too. I think the last time I was here, we were just finishing up what's called schematic design. We were not too deep in the details of the design or the floor plan. And now you're going to see a little bit more refined presentation. So I'm excited to share that. So with that, good, it worked. So this is the overall site plan. Just to orient everyone, north is always up in drawings usually, unless there's special circumstances. So you can see the football field there to the northeast corner of the site, and the modernization and the additions that are being done are mainly in the south half of the site. Just to remind everyone from last time, the main entry is now going to be off 9th. They're on the east, and that will be the main parking lot. And then there'll be a more alternative backside on 6th Street. The theater is in that sort of H white building. The theater is up to the left, and I'll go into this a little bit more in detail on the floor plan. Let's see, what else is there too? I think that's a good overall of the site. We're not doing too much improvements to the north side part of the site. There will be at 15th Street some improvements there in the future for baseball and softball. This is the overall phasing plan. The project's being done in 3 phases. The first phase is the purple that you see, which is your classrooms, commons, and administration area, core administration areas. I'll go over that a little bit more in detail. Phase 2 is the PE athletic area. Phase 3 will be the theater, a lot of the elective spaces and additional administration, and a connection to the Maxwell building there on the gray left, right below that darker orange color. So phase 1 is where we are right now, finishing up construction documents to go into construction this summer. So that'll be the first phase, and that's where the most of my focus will be tonight, because that's what we've been focusing on. We will be starting the design on phase 2 and phase 3 shortly after the construction starts this summer. This gives you a 3-dimensional view of what I'm talking about. You can see the building that has the lighter brown roof that doesn't say phase 1, but just above that, that's the tech building. And then, so phase 1 is what you see there in the sort of dark brown. It's the 3-story classroom building. It has most of the general ed and science classrooms and a few of the elective spaces. And then the lower element just below that runs long there is the main entry, the administration, and the commons. And I'll go a little bit more into detail of that. And then you'll see the phase 2 future and phase 3 future. So this is level 1 floor plan. We won't go through the whole thing, but just to remind everyone of what we're doing when it's all finished. So the lower, where there's some bright yellow, I'm gonna actually, I think this might help just because this is hard to read, if you don't mind. I think this will be the easiest one for you all to see. Hopefully you can still hear me. This area here is the 3-story building, has the classrooms, special ed, daycare, and science, and I think that's, teen parent area. So that's the 3-story element. The main entry will be coming off of here into this area here, and that's where the main office is. And then this will be the new long blue line is going to be created along here. There's going to be a lot of elements. You're not going to see that tonight. We're still developing that because it is part of the phase 2 piece also. But there's going to be a nice honor to the tradition at from Benn Senior High School. Above that, the purple is all PE athletics and support areas for that, your health classrooms, and then your theater is up there on that upper left, that sort of orange, dark orange color, and elective spaces. Production kitchens, that dark gray. And the 3 yellow classrooms is the Maxwell Center. This is the first floor. This is the second level. Mainly, it's more classrooms where the bright yellow is. And then there's some upper gym areas and some wrestling spaces in the athletic area. And level 3 is where the science and some general classrooms are. But the more exciting thing to show you is what it's going to look like. So this whole design process has really been focused on building off of the Robert Maxwell building, which was done a few years ago. So we really needed to honor that and make this feel like a comprehensive design that worked all together. So that's what this was based on, with a lot of brick and some metal metal panels to sort of honor what's happening at the Maxwell Building. The Maxwell Building also has some patterns to its window placements, and you'll see that here too. So this is the 9th Street, as if you were just parking and beginning to walk to the front entry. I think you can probably figure out where the front entry is. It's what you're seeing in the very straight on with a lot of glazing. On the left is a 3-story classroom building. On the right is your future gym complex, and then on the other side would be the other phase 2, phase 3 spaces. This is the south courtyard. You can't see it in this image, but to the left, where those 2 young people are standing there with their backpack, is the Maxwell Building. And behind us would be the Tech Building. And then this is looking into the commons and through it to the north courtyard and out to the field areas. And that's the commons that you're seeing here. It's a 2-story space. This is on the north side of the courtyard. So on the other side of the courtyard, on your left where the big bear is your PE athletic complex space, and to the right is culinary, music, theater, music, art, are all along that area. So this is the north courtyard. The other thing I wanted to mention is, back to that other image here, this is being developed for Heroes Plaza to build on the Maxwell Building and the honor of the veterans. So that's being developed right now. We have a meeting actually, I think tomorrow, about that. So this is putting it all together to get you a good image of what that looks like. So I wanted to also highlight some of the interior development that's happening, which that wasn't developed as much last time I was here. So this is in the Commons space that wants to be a learning area. It's also where the students can gather for both eating and also just to gather. So this is a view looking out to the north courtyard. And this is there's some roll-up doors, so that the nice days, the students can go in and out and have a place to eat, congregate, and also learn. And then the next picture here, this is a little bit more rudimentary, but it begins to show you the learning stair and the stair that goes on up to the second level. On the left, those 3 big steps wraps around that stair that goes up to the second level and would be a place that you could gather, and on the right where the windows are, you could have a presentation screen to do some learning. So the Maxwell Building already has some collaboration spaces that work really well, and so the design team really worked hard at making these collaboration spaces continue throughout this new portion. This is the Future Center has some collab spaces. Some of them are open, some of them are a lot more, a lot open. That didn't come out very right, sorry. Correct. Some are very open, some are semi-open to allow places for students to gather and collaborate on projects, have a conversation, and all different variety of spaces. On the lower level of the classroom, 3-story classroom, there is special ed that's in this area here, and we talked to that department and we talked about what they could use, and they really wanted collaboration spaces for them too. So you're going to see those here. This is a good view of what they begin to look like. Doesn't show up very well, but you're going to see a lot of blue in honor of the lava bears. So. But these are, you can start to see there's some glazing there on the right collaboration, so it's a little glazing being windows to help make that more contained, and then on the left image, that's a little bit more open collaboration space. On the second level is where most of the general classrooms are, and so we've created spaces to help with signage to help make people feel like it's not a long hallway, because it is a lot of classrooms in a second level of a 3-story building. So we created these angled walls this angled elements also at Maxwell, and so we developed this to honor that, but also to provide some imagery, or excuse me, some excitement for folks walking down this hallway, so it's just not a straight hallway. And then we created these alcoves for places to sit, similar to Maxwell has on the first level. Another image of it, place where you could have some posters for a dance that's coming up or some learning information. There's also some more enclosed collaboration spaces at the end of this hall that looks like this. There's actually, if you look behind me, if you turn to the other side of this, if you were able to turn around, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. If you were able to turn around, you would have a beautiful view of the mountains from this space. But this is a great place to have a large group collaboration. The Java Bear and Student Store, we really developed this basalt, really honored the basalt that happens in our community, in our area in Central Oregon, and created some interior design elements that allowed us to sort of reflect that. And we thought Java Bear would be a perfect place to begin to do that. So this is an image of what that's going to begin looking like, which is right off the Commons. This is the administration main reception up on the upper left and the student resource entry up on the second level. So in the administration, the lower level is principal and some of the other support administrators, office manager, attendance, accounting, and athletic director. On the upper level administration is all your counseling and student services. So you'll see those two images there of their entries that are both secured. And finally, a glimpse of what one of the science classrooms begin to look like. A lot of daylight, a lot of ability to move around and have space for the science labs and to allow for just a variety of being in a lab, but also have some classroom lecture area. And with that, I think I probably hit my 10 minutes, if not more. So I think that is it. So questions, or Principal Reese, anything you want to add?
Not right now.
Okay.
If there's any questions, I'd be more than happy.
I actually want to lead with our Student Voice Council and if they have any questions about it.
Oh.
I did have a question. When I was running for president, one of my biggest things was to make sure that we had like a bunch of natural light in our building, make sure that we had a bunch of just colors upon our building, which I see is happening a lot on this design, which is very beautiful. But another thing I did a lot of research on was that having plants inside the building was very important for increasing productivity amongst the students.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering if that was in the plans at all, not just on the outside, but inside the building, if there's plants that would be around.
I love that. That's great. There is going to be plenty of landscaping around the building. Inside, it's really up to the school and the district to add that, but there are plenty of places that could happen. I think there's so many places for collaboration that could also allow for that. And there is some beautiful daylight that could really enhance the growth of those wonderful plants. So yeah.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Great.
We love the fact that daylight as well.
And we've heard a lot from our staff and our students in regards to natural daylight and the importance of that. My only concern with plants inside is making sure that we have supervision and adequate supervision, and it doesn't block those lines of sight, as well as allowing flow around the building for students. So, but I love the idea of some natural plants in the building.
My question, excuse me, my question is related to, one, the daycare. Is that for faculty and staff only, or is it in association with any early childhood development programs? And also, is there any consideration for having a student garden or anything in terms of from a sustainability standpoint?
Yeah, I can speak to the daycare. The daycare is primarily for our teen parents and our teen parent program, and they'll be located on the first floor along with the playground. It will be relocated. And secondarily, if we have any openings, potentially staff members' kids from around the district. And then what was your second question, Marcus?
About the early childhood development programs like OSU and COCC actually has early childhood development. Is there an opportunity to be able to utilize that as a place for them to get extra training and a hands-on experience working with students?
Yeah, and we too have a mentorship program at Benton High School and an early childhood development, as well as a family wellness program. And those students are identified to go in and, after a vetted process, and work with students in the daycare with adult supervision.
The last piece was the sustainability in terms of having a student garden, be able to teach the kids, the resourcefulness of basically growing their own produce and stuff like that to utilize. May either work with our nutrition staff and so forth and so on. I'm just trying to create those opportunities as well. We're considering that also.
Yeah, we are, and we do currently have some greenhouses out back, and we have some partnerships with our nutrition services in regards to that farm to table and that sustainability piece.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this. I love the versatility of a lot of the spaces and the visibility and the natural light. We heard a little bit about from focus groups for LGBTQ+ students, and then I was curious on the flip side, this addition of, you mentioned special education focus groups, and I believe those are the two student focus groups you've done, I guess. I was curious, and I can't, it's so small for me to read even on my computer, how you set up the classrooms for special education. If you could just walk me through that a little bit of what the takeaways from that and how you decided the placement of that.
Sure, I can do that. So to back up about focus groups, we had focus groups with all the different like art, well, no, let me take that back. We didn't do art because that's not in this space. We did science, we did administration. So we met with a lot of people along with students a couple times.
Oh, great.
And so that was a great opportunity. And so we also met when we had a focus group with special ed teachers and administrators. The layout currently is smaller classrooms with spaces in between to support them. So I'll try to do it with my with a laser. So you guys
Yeah,
can
your
see.
laser helps because I cannot follow up there, so thank you.
So this is a classroom, this is a classroom, and then this is a classroom, and this is a classroom. And then they have a space that they share for either one-on-one, or a teacher could be in there. Then you also have, I need to read this too. Hold on. Trying to remember what these smaller spaces are because they just moved around on me. So I think this is
Maybe teacher workspace?
Thank
or-
you. No, it's not it's a, I just can't read it, sorry. It's been a while since I've looked at that in particular, but I believe these are all tested. That could be a testing room. This is a conference space up here. This is a speech and language, a speech area. This is a flex space. And I believe this is psych, I'm sorry. This is a psych space. So those are the spaces. And then what you're not seeing in this plan is to the left is your life skills classroom with the kitchen and other things like that.
So the consensus was to, instead of space classrooms around, was to keep it in a certain central area.
That's the
for special
decision that was
education
made.
Services.
Not by us, but by the team.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Did you want to answer?
And I can just speak to multiple different focus groups. We had science focus groups, we had teen parent focus groups, we had special education focus groups to include district leadership and special education. We had main office focus groups, we had counseling focus groups, we had future center focus groups, we had focus groups after focus groups, and we're still having focus groups, especially with phase one. So multiple different focus groups, getting a lot of stakeholders at the table to really share their vision of what this could look like. And one of the visions, especially with our special education voices that we heard, was definitely first level for access, especially with ADA, and making sure that our students have that optimal opportunity to be part of that inclusion model throughout the building, and what does that look like as far as flow. One thing that I can speak to on that second floor is we were purposeful because of the number of classrooms up there, not to put the lockers on the second floor so that students aren't stopping and disrupting that flow, because that's where most of your students are going to be housed, and taking a look and being very specific about that. And lots of different studies out there with solar studies and taking a look at that natural light. And there's a lot to this. But we are very, very, very excited about the end product and about the end game. And in 4 years from now, you're going to see a facility that I truly believe is going to be second to none.
I just want to speak a little bit more about the thinking around clustering different programming together for special programs. One is that with the level of staffing that we have, staff is often very fluid. They may work with a student for 15 or 20 minutes in this group and then move to another group. So that's one of the reasons that the teachers felt it was really important to cluster those learning spaces together for special programs.
Just a quick question for any of you about the informal gathering spaces or meeting spaces. I know when I was working on Caldera, I learned how expensive every square foot is. And so I know those are hard decisions. So maybe like from Caldera, I'd love to just hear like, how are those collaboration spaces being used? What did you learn or change between Caldera and Ben High about the use of
Abby,
that
maybe
space?
you could talk about
Yeah.
at Caldera.
Yeah, the collab spaces at Caldera are great. This model looks very similar. I know every lunch, kids are always racing to get the collab space first, and there's just like special passes for if students want to work in the hallway in one of the collab rooms. They just have like a slip, and they're great, yeah.
And I can speak to the two collab spaces, especially in the Robert D. Maxwell Center. Obviously, the large collaboration space is Perseverance Hall, and it is used constantly, and it is such a nice venue for anything and everything from meetings to IB testing, to having large gatherings and classes in there, to having staff meetings. And then the smaller collaboration spaces used in Robert D. Maxwell are specifically used for with a lot of our international baccalaureate students, and getting together and working on their group projects and all of that. So as far as other collaboration spaces that we currently have at Ben High School, they're basically non-existent except for our media center. But those are our two right now, and we're excited to add some more.
Chris, I'd like to know if you're having any changes in your CTE programs, or adding any of the additional things. You've got most of them, but.
Well, we love a lot of things about Ben High School. We love our tradition, we love our story, we love our pride, and we absolutely love International Baccalaureate, but just as important is our career and technical education programs, and they are very robust, been very purposeful to make sure that we are not losing any of our programming, to include CTE and our performing arts and our International Baccalaureate. And as we go through these three different phases, each phase is going to present its own set of challenges. I'm not going to lie, and I'm going to be open. It's going to be tight, but we are not cutting anything. What we have currently is what we're going to continue to have in the next 4 years. We're going to have all our sports programs. We're going to have all our International Baccalaureate. We're going to have all of our current CTE programs, and everything that we love about our school. And as we progress forward, there's going to be something about this that's going to bring the Lava Bears even closer together, going through construction, as you would imagine, and we're going to come out better for it at the other end.
Yes, honey.
I was just wondering, as a president at Mountain View, we have struggled with making sure every
like every activity we have at our school is represented. We've definitely had a hard time where like only people would go to like football games or boys games, and there was definitely a lack of people going to like performing arts. And I was just wondering, how are you like making sure that even if you have, since you're including all of these programs, how are you making sure that each kid is feeling like represented in each program, feeling like they're not excluded just because they're not a football player or not a boy, for lost for better words?
Yeah, great. All of our students, to include our student athletes, we want them to have a sense of belonging and connection to our community that we love. And part of that is we've got to reach out to all of our groups, whether that's equestrian or whether that's our chess club or whether that's our cross-cultural club or whether that is our football team or whether that is our softball team, and making sure that everybody's represented in all the different activities that we do, whether that's an assembly or whether that is an outreach or whether that's communication, and making sure that all Lava Bears feel loved. And that's not easy to do in a large comprehensive high school, and you have that lived experience at Mountain View and at Caldera, and there's a lot. With 1,300 students, with close to 120 staff members, we're a small city. And sometimes that's hard to do that outreach in making sure that everybody is included, but we try our best. Good question.
Can I piggyback on Honey's question? Because when I hear your question, I think about things like the long blue line representation. And so hearing how, you know, that representation of the school and the community and its history, the purposefulness around representation there.
Yeah, one of the uniqueness of this build, unlike Caldera, is that we currently have a school culture. We currently have 120 years of graduates. Caldera started without that school culture, and that's a little bit different in a new build. You can build and then bring in the school culture, but how do you take that rich school culture that already exists and make sure that it is incorporated somehow into the new build? And we've been very purposeful to make sure, and that's always on the forefront of our minds, how do we include this thing that we call the long blue line? How do we reach every single Lava Bear that has graduated from Ben Senior High School? And how is that represented? And part of it is we have a deep-rooted connection to our veterans in our community. Just the other day, we recognized 33 Bend High grads that died in World War II. Read their names, and you know, so it goes all the way back to World War I. One of the buildings, Bend High School, it was the makeshift hospital during the Spanish flu. Bend High has seen 2 pandemics. You go back and you take a look at the distinguished alumni, and how do you incorporate all that into this design? And I think we've got a pretty awesome concept, especially running through the new commons and making sure that that is represented in a meaningful way.
Coming right off of that, I was wondering, because I feel like at Ben High, one way to, with the new remodel, to keep the same feel of old Ben High, I was wondering if you're gonna keep any of the iconic artwork that's like in the cafeteria, that kind of thing, to like, you know, keep the traditions going.
You bet. We actually went through and did a deep dive into every little nook and cranny at Ben High School. Even we went on stage and we took a look at the old podium up there. And I said, we got to find a way to save this podium. This podium, even though the district's been gracious and given us a new podium for graduation, we still lug that old thing out and put it out at graduation because it's meaningful to us. and it's seen a lot of graduates walk across the stage. So how do we incorporate that into a new design? How do we take the current basketball floor and that lava bear claw, and how do we incorporate that somehow? How do we take the current memorials of students that we've lost at Ben High School and incorporate that into a design and make sure that we're not losing that? How do we incorporate a lot of different things that are very meaningful?
Principal Reese, I am going to ask a question based on my own high school experience, because my high school was normal my freshman year, and then it was under construction for the next 4 years. So my high school was a lot of, they took all the grass out and dirt and they asphalted over everything. We were in modulars behind, fences and walking long distances through construction to classrooms. I don't know what the process looks like during this rebuild. If you could talk a little bit about that and how it's going to affect students and the disruptions that, Bend High now is going to expect.
Yeah, great question. I feel as good as I can about phase one. I really, really do. Phase one is doable. Phase one, in June, we're going to lose I Hall, we're going to lose D Hall, and we're going to lose most of C Hall. They're going to prep the current baseball field for that 3-story building, as well as the commons, and that's all we're going to lose in phase one, and we're able to displace those teachers in those classes within the building. Believe it or not, we do have some space, losing some enrollment with Caldera opening. And with that, you have a reduced staff. And we got some open spaces in our current mods. We're not bringing in any more mods, but it's going to be tight. It will be tight. I'm not going to lie. We're going to get to know each other really well. Yeah, especially with the flow around the building. The flow around the building is going to look different. Tomorrow I've got a walkthrough with the fire department, as well as Mike Condon and KNCC, and we're going to take a look at where's that fencing going to go. What are we going to do in the case of an emergency? What is that lived experience going to be for our current staff and our students? And we have our minds right now as lava bears, and we're going into this thing, but it's construction. It's going to be loud, it's going to be dirty, and how are we going to make sure that we have the best learning environment for our students? And we're keeping the tech building, we're keeping the Robert D. Maxwell Center, we're displacing the lost classrooms into the building, and I feel really good about phase one. Don't ask me about phase two. We'll get there. We'll get there with losing a gym.
My final question is, in pertaining to beforehand, are you working with the students and the staff to try to figure out a way to implement some different, opportunities to say, when morale gets a little low, because everybody's all packed in together, it'd be consideration to say, hey, let's come up with a new tradition or some new traditions in the sense of how can we definitely make sure that we find some time to take a breath. Show some grace. What are we going to do in terms of have you guys considered working with the students and the staff on that?
Yeah, and we've already gathered our staff and our students, and the staff more so than the students. But, there's going to be a lot of patience and grace and kindness and flexibility that's going to need to happen during the next 4 years, specifically the next 2 years. And it got real for staff. There were some wide eyes the other day when Meredith came in and started talking about packing up your classroom, and here's what the move is going to look like, and it got real for folks. But we're going to come together. That's what we're known for, and that's going to be part of my main job, is making sure that we're doing everything in our power to keep that staff morale and our student morale and that school spirit alive. When I talk about phase two, that we don't have a real good game plan for it yet. We will. We've been focused in on phase one, just like the architects have been focused in on phase one, and then we'll get to phase two in a couple of years. But what's a volleyball game going to look like when you don't have a gym? Where are you going to practice? The basketball, where's that? PE, weights, where is all these items going to go? And then how do you keep that school spirit alive? If you've ever been to a volleyball game at Ben High School, we'll fill the bottom stands. It's pretty impressive. And so we want to make sure that we are keeping that at the forefront too, and not losing that momentum. Great question. And it's just continuing to gather staff voices and mainly student voices, because this is the students' lived experience. And, you know, we are talking about some new traditions. We're talking about, you know, a freshman that's coming in. They'll get to spend, you know, at least the first year in the gymnasium, 2 years displaced, and then they can christen the new gymnasium their senior year. So, and then they start thinking through that, and that's kind of cool. You know, I get to play in the old, and then I get to be the first to play in the new.
Honey?
One last question. At Mountain View, we lost our teacher's lounge. It was replaced with the student council room. And to reel it back into teacher appreciation, I was wondering if you guys had areas that would be a teacher's lounge, for a place for teachers to go during the prep, to get away from annoying teenagers, and just kind of have like a place where there could be like coffee or goodies, or just like somewhere that there is just going to be only adults, no students are allowed, just to make sure that they feel like this is my community with just the teachers. And obviously students are a part of their life, but like just a place in school that they can leave.
I like you thinking about teachers. That's awesome. Thinking about staff and that mental health for staff. Luckily, we have the Robert D. Maxwell Center. That's not going anywhere, and a lot of our staff gather there at lunchtime, and we get together and we're able to have staff meetings and come together and talk through some things. And so that's a pretty special place that has already been constructed as part of this overall master plan, and we're very excited to still have that as a place that teachers can gather. Thanks for asking that question.
Chris, can you also just name the role? You've also had a core advisory or an advisory committee that's gone along with you during this process, correct?
Well, the core committee has been really BBTA Architects, KNCC, as well as district leadership and facilities. You know, Dr. Cook and Laura have been a part of that, have been at the table, getting all those stakeholders together, and then BBT really coming out and diving into different focus groups and listening, and they do. I was able to work with Renee and her crew on the Robert D. Maxwell Center, and just, you know, they probably could just hand us some plans and say, here you go. But they are so thoughtful about coming out and really taking in feedback and really listening to those different voices and trying to incorporate it into a build. At the end of the day, it might not happen because money's involved, right? You gotta look at that square footage, and you gotta look at that. Is it a need or is it a want?
Thank you. Are there any further questions or comments? Thank you both so much. It's just really exciting work.
Well, I gotta say, this has been a long time coming, and we are so absolutely just blessed that our community has passed this bond and that we're this far along in the process, and it's gonna be phenomenal at the end.
Thank you. I think that's a perfect segue right now. Bonds are for buildings, and we are very, very thankful to our community for passing that bond. We're going to shift gears here and hear about the potential for a local option levy. The way I remember these is bonds are buildings, levies are learning. And so we're going to hear from Scott Mabin, our Director of Communications, on a levy option.
Chair Barnes-Delaki, if I could just jump in for a second. I want to just reframe this for us. This started back in the summer, June 20th. We discussed, you all directed us to look into the feasibility of whether or not a levy was a possibility for us to consider. And if you recall, back in September, we presented at the workshop kind of a basic leveled conversation with you all about the purpose and how a levy might look and what we would do potentially if we were going to seek that from our community. Since that point, we've partnered with Nelson Research. JL's on the screen right there. We'll introduce him here in just a second to start to dig into some polling questions and find out what the receptivity was of our community. When we would say, here are our priorities, here are things that we're interested in talking about that'll be a part of our strategic plan, how do they resonate with our local taxpayers and voters, and whether or not there's interest in support of those things, and how we then would perceive the feasibility of asking for additional resources to work towards further implementation of additional resources to work towards that strategic plan. And so Scott and JL are going to share the kind of culmination of all that work that's happened over the last, I'd say, 3.5, 4 months. I'm excited for this presentation, and we're here to talk about those aspects and to define the difference between bonds are for buildings and levies are for learning, and what this might look like for us in the near future. So at this point, I'd like to invite Scott to start us off.
Thank you, Dr. Cook, and thank all of you for your time this evening. That last presentation is a tough act to follow, and I wish I had some of that Java right about now. All right, so tonight's actually the 4th time you'll be having a conversation about this, twice last summer, and then this will be my second presentation that I'm participating in. For tonight's presentation, like Dr. Cook mentioned, you'll be hearing from me, and we'll come back to Dr. Cook at the end, and also Deputy Superintendent Norquist has a little piece of this, and then we'll have JL Wilson with Nelson Research, who's joining us from Salem tonight, talk a little bit about the public research work that we've done over the last few months. So I'd like to start just quickly, and again, Dr. Cook touched on this momentarily, but review some of where we began with this conversation last year, also a recap of some of what we discussed in the September workshop on exactly what is a local option levy. It's been a little time, it's been a few months, and I think it would be good for all of us and for our community to again hear a little bit about what this mechanism is and the distinction between bonds and levies. And we'll also take a look at where levies are being used now in Oregon and where they're not. And then we'll dive into some of that data from the surveys. So again, last June 20th, Chair Barnes Delakia presented that great overview of Oregon school funding issues, and including how some districts rely on that local option levy to meet their operating needs. And that, if you'll recall, included her analysis showing that in communities with a cost of living index that's double digits over the state average, so like 10% or higher, those districts pretty much across the board are now relying on a local option levy, with the exception of one, and that would be us here in the Ben Lapine schools. And then that same evening, we received your informal guidance to actively investigate the possibility of a local option levy here. The board followed up with us July 11th with your unanimous vote directing Superintendent Cook to actively investigate that. And that included the assessment that we conducted on the needs, the community interest for a levy, and the potential timing for this ballot referral. So September workshop, that's where we talked about, that was our Levy 101 discussion, if you'll recall, just a basic overview. I just, it's been a while, so just to provide a bit of a recap for you, voters in Oregon can approve a new short-term local option levy that's outside of the permanent rate. And so that's essentially what we mean when we're talking about a local option levy. It's outside of the permanent rate limit. And then, of course, these must be approved by voters. We talked about the timing of elections, with May and November really being the ideal windows of opportunity, because you're not facing the additional hurdle of a double majority requirement. And we also talked about how these can be structured as a fixed dollar amount or a rate-based levy. And I recall there was a question at that time, that might have been from Director Olson, about just how many districts are approaching this as a fixed dollar amount versus a rate-based levy. I had a hard time finding any really that seemed to be structuring it as a fixed dollar amount. So it seems like most districts are preferring to set the levy amount, and then throughout the course of the 3, 4, or 5 years, whatever it might be, that would determine the amount that comes in. Whatever direction we end up going, it needs to be the same throughout the serial part of the levy. Throughout all years, it needs to either stay as a fixed rate or as a fixed dollar amount. Again, levy cannot exceed 5 years. Typically, districts are using these to support operating needs, again, as opposed to what a bond would support with, say, construction or remodels. So levies are for staffing programs, student services. And then there are statutory limits set on the amount that you can request. I'm not going to, unless we need to, I'm not going to go into detail on that right now. So here we have, we did some research on what we're seeing across the state with levy use. And these are the 7 largest districts right now in Oregon that have a levy in place. And so these are listed in order of enrollment. I do want to note that I took a second look at that annual amount raised from Portland Public Schools. That is low, actually. It's $117 million for the coming school year. And so I think I was looking back at an earlier part of this 5 years, but that's an indication of some of the growth that they have seen. And then here are the 7 largest districts without a local option levy. So Ben Lapine Schools, the 5th largest district by enrollment in Oregon, is the 3rd largest district without a local option levy in place, behind Salem and Hillsborough. And then finally, here in Central Oregon, I wanted to show you what we're seeing with the larger school districts. So Sisters alone has had a local option levy in place for nearly a quarter of a century, and renewed it not long ago. So not really being used to much extent here in our area. So this past fall, we began to think more deeply about how exactly we can check in with our voters about the question of a local option levy. And in preparing to do that, we started to consider some of the community input that we have been gathering the past few years as we try to focus our efforts around the strategic priorities, strategic initiatives of our district. And so at this time, I'd like to invite Deputy Superintendent Nordquist to spend a few minutes talking with you about the various ways that we have engaged with our community in recent years, and then also what we've learned from those conversations about the needs and the opportunities that we see moving forward.
Thanks, Scott. And much of this you've heard before, but I think it's important in the context of this conversation. You know, looking back, I feel there was a real culture shift in our district beginning going into the 2018-19 school year in terms of really thinking about elevating the voices of our students, staff, and community members. And that's when we embarked on then that first Excellence and Equity Review. It was the fall and winter of 2018-19. 19. As you know, we had 35 listening sessions with different community, family groups across the district with an emphasis on members of our community whose voices were often not part of the conversation. In addition to that, we met with the staffs of every school in the district and had focus groups and surveys for every school in the district. Out of that work, one of the most exciting things that happened was either the expansion or the creation of more advocacy. I don't even like the word advisory as much as advocacy groups. And I look at Abby over here with the Board Student Voice Council. I look at the District Equity Coalition, the Latino Family Advisory Group, our Black Family Advisory Group, our Alliance Group, the expansion of GSAs throughout our middle schools and high schools, social justice clubs. Some of those existed before, but really energy, and I think our DEI department deserves a lot of credit for that work. But we have a standing base of stakeholders available to give us feedback and then to push us when it comes to thinking about our priorities. And then when I think about one of the things, and Carrie, I'm thinking about you as one of our most senior board members, that this year we administered the Youth Truth Survey for the 4th year in a row. So a vetted, well-developed survey that goes to every parent of a K-12 student, every staff member, and our students in 6th through 12th grade. And we have years of data now to look at out of that. Last year, we embarked on the work with the District Culture and Climate Task Force. So we have 35 classified, certified building administrative staff and district administrative staff really trying to grapple with some of our problems and challenges with our students with the highest needs. And then this year, we have begun the process with a strategic planning process. So, and again, hearing lots of voices being a very important part of that process. And out of that, let's see, yes, Scott, if you'll go to the next slide. What's interesting is that there is some real consistency about the priorities that come from all these different stakeholder groups, students, families, staff, and I think those are very well reflected in the board's goals, but I wanted to talk about some that really have been showing up and that we were interested then in testing in our surveying. And one of those is class sizes, smaller class sizes. And I always want to emphasize that smaller class sizes are not an end unto themselves. We value smaller class sizes because it promotes closer relationships between students and teachers, among students. It gives time for teachers to intervene with individual students or small groups of students. It lowers the workload of teachers. So there are so many things that we value about smaller class sizes. Career and technical education, and I know to talk to Chris Reese and hear his voice speak with such pride, but when we talk about wanting students to have a passion and purpose and plan, with our community stakeholders and our families, the belief in having strong, meaningful career pathways for our students, and really even taking that into middle school and thinking about it, when we talk about life and career readiness as early as elementary school. So one of the areas that we've heard lots of support for. Teacher and staff retention, obviously that's been a huge point of discussion for us as we've gone through collective bargaining with both our associations and hearing the need of the challenges that they face in terms of being able to support themselves and their families in an expensive area like Bend. And going beyond salaries, what are the working conditions? What are the cultures? What is the leadership life like that keeps, not only attracts a diverse and talented staff, but keeps them then, and as they then become the leaders at all levels in our district. And then go to the next slide. Yeah. And another thing that we've heard, and again, that's under that goal 1 with academic, every student having a strong academic foundation. And that means that every student is challenged. And so we need to, one of the areas that we hear from our students, from our community, that idea of really having the kinds of academic offerings that can challenge every student. And often, sometimes how schools are limited in terms of both advanced classes and enrichment opportunities is because of staffing, a shortage of staffing. And so it's like, if I have a class with 14 students, it means another class is going to have 36 students. So it often suffers when we have limited funding, that we're not able to offer some of those classes. When we talk about student support, I want to be clear that that is both academic support and support for students' behavioral, mental, and emotional health. That is something, we probably wouldn't have seen as much emphasis on that in terms of the public awareness of that before the pandemic. But I think that it's broadly understood that many of our students and families are facing long-term challenges as a result of the pandemic. And so while we know those challenges were there before, I think there's really broad support and understanding that we need to have resources to help students. And then this is something I love, the last thing I want to talk about, because I've been in this school district for 16 years and I know that way predates me, this strong belief, and I use the cliche of the whole child, but the arts and foreign languages and a rich array of elective offerings for students, because that's where some students find their passion, and that's where they find their gifts and talents that maybe aren't seen in a mathematics class, and they're such a rich part of our education. So it's exciting to see those, it was exciting to see these priorities continue to emerge from all the different groups, and maybe they're not always expressed in exactly the same ways, but as common threads. And if you think about when Whitney talked about strategic planning, you probably heard some of these same things. Scott, I'll turn it back to you then.
Thank you, Laura. That's better. By the way, I don't know if you noticed, but we have some amazing new slide templates that Becca Berta designed for us, and we've been using tonight. You saw some of Becca's work earlier in the evening during the SRO appreciation, all that. So kudos to Becca for putting this together. Thank you. So in October, we brought on Nelson Research to help us develop voter surveys that would inform us of several things. And initially in November, we sought to learn how our community feels generally about this idea of a new school levy, where they see priority areas for funding, and whether we might face some headwinds or critical resistance for a local option levy at this time. And then digging deeper for that second voter survey that we conducted just last month, we asked about a levy amount that would feel right for our community. Also, we took a look at potential levels of support among different groups of voters, and then finally questions to help us really sharpen our focus on the needs and priorities that a levy could support and how we might express that in a survey, in a levy proposal. So with that, I'd like to bring in JL now with Nelson Research. He is going to go through those findings from those 2 rounds of surveys with, I think it was close to 900 voters in our school district. Go ahead, JL.
JL, we can't hear you right now, so give us just a second. Can you try again?
By any chance, are you muted on your end?
Scott, are these the same questions that you went through during our last meeting? I mean, the last time you spoke about the voters?
What we're about to present you with the surveys?
Are these different ones?
Yeah, I mean, so this would be the first time we've presented to you on the surveys.
Let me see last
Yeah.
time.
So September was our board workshop. We went out for the first round of survey work in November. We did a second round in January. So we have not yet had an opportunity to walk through this with you.
Great, thank you.
I think he's trying to diagnose it. Hang on, JL.
JL, can you talk for me here?
Sure. You're coming across just fine to me.
What do you guys think?
Are you able to hear me?
How's that?
It's getting better. We're working on bringing that level up. Hold on.
Okay.
Come on.
Okay, I think we can proceed, JL. Go ahead.
Sounds good. Good evening, all. My name is J.L. Wilson. I own a company called Nelson Research. If you want to advance the slide, Scott. We've been doing survey research in the Northwest since 1980. We are primarily focused on school districts, local governments, industry groups. We have historically done the survey research for Ben Lapine schools, including for the 2022 bond levy, and it's certainly our honor to be able to do that for you with a local option. Next slide. So as Scott alluded to, we have conducted 2 surveys, one in November, one in January. I'm going to first get into the November survey because that really set the stage for what we wanted to talk about in January. So the November survey we conducted between November 13th and November 15th. We had a very robust sample, 474 respondents, meeting all quotas with respect to age, voting propensity, location in the district, gender, party affiliation, some of those key metrics, so that you can have assurance that the people we talk to are going to be the people who will largely be making the decisions in May, should you choose to go out for levy. So that produces an error rate of about 4.5%, which is great in terms of being able to make decisions and be able to study how subgroups move and respond to the various pieces of information. So our 3 objectives for the November survey were, I'm not going to go in order here. The first one was to identify the community priorities. I always say, if your priorities aren't 60% plus in a measure like this, you're probably taking your life into your own hands. And so we want to be sure that we're focused on the things that the community is focused on and prioritizes. Second, what is the potential price point that people are comfortable with? And then the third item, which I spend a lot of time on the surveys, is identifying what we call the critical resistance. And that is, what is that, what are the number of voters who are just going to oppose the measure regardless? And it might have nothing to do with the district. It might have everything to do with personal finances, how people perceive their own economy. And you've got to know this information going in, because you don't want to run a measure into an environment where people don't feel good about their personal situation and you don't have any chance for success. Next slide. So we asked one of the framing questions, would you be willing to pay more in property taxes to improve programs and educational opportunities? That number improved from the 2022 surveys that we had done for the district in terms of the overall opposition has dropped. But based on the 404 voter, and we call that the high propensity, and that is the subgroup of voters that we absolutely know will show up in a May election. How do they feel? And typically on this survey, that's going to be about 60, sometimes up to 2/3 of your sample, because we're really focused on that subgroup. That was about 45% supportive, about 37 and change not supportive. And so you had about a 7% gulf there that, at least in my estimation, gave me reason for cautious optimism. Next slide. We did a ranking system on a number of key priorities identified by Scott and the team, and we went through a whole ranking process in the survey instrument to ask people whether these were the highest level priority, which we rated as a level 4 priority, or level 3 priority, which is a priority, but not the highest level. My personal sort of litmus test on these, I like to see these come in at 60% plus to feel like we have a good opportunity to sell these to the general public and give you the best opportunities for success. So you see the dividing line that occurs with this menu of things that could potentially have been funded at the local option levy. The skill-based career pathways being the top by far. Learning opportunities outside of the school day, increasing number of teachers at lower class sizes, increasing attendance and reducing chronic absenteeism, improving educational support for vulnerable populations, and increasing the elective class offerings. Those all came in above 60%, and I think that helped us focus what we wanted to ultimately propose in the second survey. So I just wanted to give you a sense of the ranking process and how your voters perceive these. Identifying what your respondents would be willing to pay. I'll tell you the first thing that I'm looking for, and our numbers aren't on this slide, so I'm going to have to kind of go by feel. I had a chart underneath this that didn't get included, but the first thing I'm looking for is who says nothing. And there are a lot of districts where that number comes in 40, 45, up to 50%. And it's your first indicator out of the gate that you really don't have an opportunity to be successful. So the fact that the subgroup that said nothing on this was at 27.6, again, reinforced my opinion that there's room in this community to support a local option levy. And you had basically 63% of your respondents say they would support something. And when you go down the chart, the dark green bars are your highest propensity voters. So your higher propensity voters were much more willing to support something north of $40 a month. And I believe between the $20, $30, and $40, your 404 voter, your highest propensity voter, came in at around 53% support for something in that range. And so, again, it informed our opinion of a viable price point, which you'll see came through in survey 2. We typically, in a survey, ask an agree-disagree series. And this is really intended for messaging, one, in a normal benchmark. But in these types of surveys, I'm really looking at it to see if people have a visceral emotional response to a statement that we know that the district is going to make in order to sell a bond levy. That helps us understand, receptivity. And we made a statement, would you support the levy to increase opportunities for kids? You had 59% agreement with that. Would you support the levy to fund programs that the state is currently not adequately funding, and it's up to us to fill in the gaps? You had majority support for that statement. But then you look at the bottom, and the reason those are shaded in red is because those are negative statements. In other words, those are drags. And so we asked, basically made a statement, I would not be able to support a property tax increase in this economy. You had 44%, just over support for that, which again informs my opinion that you've got an opportunity to pass something, because I see a lot of response in this in a lot of district that comes in well over 50%, and you just don't have an opportunity to be successful. At 44.5%, that tells me that there's room. And then we made a statement in the agree disagree statement. We asked people to agree with the statement that their taxes are already too high and that they would not support, and that had even less support at 42. So again, it started to form our opinion that there was room to ask the community for a local option levy that would increase the property tax rate. And this slide is a comparison to, and actually I think it's, it might be reversed. But the 2023 number was actually the 50%. So basically what we're asking in this question, again, in this economy, I cannot afford an increase in my property taxes. You actually had more people disagree with that statement than agree with that statement. And furthermore, in no case was the agreement ever close to 50%. So again, what I'm stressing here is that we spend a lot of time trying to figure out how people are feeling about their personal economic circumstances and whether they have a capacity to support what the district is asking. And so as a consequence of this survey, I think we really came to a conclusion that there was capacity to support and ask, and this is another way we arrived at that conclusion. Next slide. So the recommendations stemming from the initial survey, again conducted in November. And the question is simply this: does the school district have an opportunity to successfully craft a local option levy to support additional education initiatives? It was my feeling, given the numbers, that the response is absolutely you do. Again, we did not get into specifics of the price point. We weren't there yet. But based on what we looked at, I felt like we had an opportunity to do something within a support ceiling of about 55%. And so we kind of established a critical resistance, and that is we are probably going to get a 45% no vote just based on how people are perceiving their circumstances in the economy. But you had an upside of potentially 55%. So that tells me you have an opportunity to be successful. You had 63% of your respondents and 68% of your highest propensity voters say that they would support something. And then we identified a price point. From this survey, we identified around $20 a month based on majority support from those who are your highest propensity voters. And again, only 27% indicated that they would support nothing. And again, I've seen many districts where that number is 40, 45, 50%, in which case it really, it doesn't paint a good picture for you going forward. So I think that given the experience of the first survey in November, I think it gave us a reason to be optimistic about moving forward and actually putting pen to paper on a real proposal. So that is a high-level summary of the first survey. The second survey we followed on January 2nd, and this was conducted between January 2nd and January 5th. We had a total respondents of 428. Again, a very robust sample. Margin of error now about 4.7%. You can make very good decisions based on a survey with that low of a margin, and you're able to make generalizations based on the subgroups also with that level of response. Again, matched to a voter profile for the May electorate, which is going to be very heavily oriented toward, again, the highest propensity voters that we know will show up in a May election. And so the objectives for the January survey to identify the critical resistance to the actual price point that was tested, which was at $1 per thousand of assessed value, an identification of the perceived benefits, an identification of key messaging, and an overall sense of the viability of the measure. And so I just want to as we asked this question numerous times throughout the survey in order to really hone people in and really hone our opinion on whether we felt that we had a chance to put a viable survey in front of voters, or a viable proposal in front of voters. So the first, what we call the uninformed ballot, and this is the initial ballot, and at this stage, this is right at the beginning of a survey, we give people effectively just the ballot title. The ballot title, and I know it's not going to be the precise ballot title, but the key is give the closest facsimile to the ballot title that as you think it's going to be drafted. And it's not going to give the voter much information. It's going to say generally it's going to support, in fact, I'll read you the title. It says, shall the district basically for 5 years beginning 24-25, this measure may cause property taxes to increase more than 3%. That is all we give to the respondent because that is all they're going to see. And you see how the number comes in at 49% support, 40% opposed. Not a great start, but not bad either. It's right side up by about 9 points, and you probably got a lot of room for growth as people receive information and start to understand what's in it. So the uninformed ballot, the initial ballot, is really the key benchmark with which we judge the efficacy of the message testing, and also the key components of the measure to see how they move people against this 49% baseline. After we ask this informed question, or uninformed ballot, we ask the first informed ballot, informed number 1. And this gives people just a little more information. And what we start to do is we start to inform people of the features and benefits very generally. And we also get a little more granular on the cost. And in this case, this is the first time that we articulate that for the median assessed value of $290,000 in the county, it's going to cost the average taxpayer, property taxpayer, about $300 a year, $25 a month. So we get a little more granular on the cost, and we start to inform people of the features and benefits and what it's going to fund. And you see that the support increases. It goes from 49.1 to 52.6. And you'll notice that the opposition stays about the same. And what happened is you see a lot of those people in the gray area, which is the I don't know, they can come in off the sidelines and actually support the measure. So you see some growth. Then we asked an informed question number 2. And an informed question number 2 is when we really get into the features and benefits. And we talk about those 6 items that we're going to fund. It's the class sizes, it's the skill-based career pathways, the recruitment and retention of quality teachers and staff, support for struggling disadvantaged students, advanced academic offerings, and enhanced elective offerings. And so we go into a little bit of detail and we get people focused on what they're getting for that money. And then we ask again, okay, how do you support or oppose the measure? And again, the top end number grows. And so you see basically you have about 56% support, and the opposition drops down to about 36. And so what you're seeing is people move from the opposed to the support category based on their understanding of what's going to be in the levy. And then finally, the post-test. And the post-test really measures, once you put this measure through the car wash of questions, as I call it, and that is you are giving them the pro messaging, you're giving them some of the con messaging. The oppositional messaging is not so much messaging about any liabilities. It's more just drilling down on specific concerns of cost is really what we're talking about there. But once you run everything through the car wash, you come out with a post-test of 51.4, and again, your opposition settles in at about 40%, just like it was in the on the uninformed ballot and the informed ballot number 1. So you kind of get a sense of where things start to settle with this measure, and you start to develop the window of opportunity that you have to be successful based on what you're offering and the price point. Go ahead, Scott. And so these are the programs, the 6 programs that I alluded to when we talked about really getting into the features and benefits of the levy. And so you can get a sense here of how these were supported. Again, they were supported very similar to how they were supported in the November survey. You see what happens when we talk about career and technical education in high school. That just goes off the charts. And so it really does inform my opinion that, talking about career and technical ed is clearly, to me, how this thing really gets framed. And then talking about adding teaching staff to protect class sizes, another big winner. Increasing the number of reading specialists, enabling the district to improve CTE classes, and then adding teaching staff to the highest needs schools. All of those very, very well. And what that informs you is keep in mind when you're talking about passing a measure, you're going to probably hammer home. You probably have enough space to do 3 or 4 key messages. 3 or 4, because by the time you're tired of saying it, it's just starting to absorb with the people that you're asking to pay for it. And so that's why you've got to keep very, very focused. And what we've done basically is identify those things that resonate deeply, and it informs, the type of messaging you should employ and what people care about most. The perceived benefits, this was an interesting battery of questions because what we wanted to do was test the district and particularly with respect to the geographical dispersion and whether people believe that the benefits of the measure would accrue to them or to their neighbors or to the people that they generally knew. And I was very interested in how people perceive this geographically. Overall, it tested very well. 62% of respondents believe that the students and families in their area, so where they lived in their neighborhoods, would benefit by the proposed investments. And I noticed a lot of consistency there, except for the south part of the district. And I've noticed this historically, obviously, that those in the south part of the district did not feel as much that they would benefit. However, when you ask the second question, when we asked whether respondents believe that the proposed levy would benefit students, the local businesses, and the economy, the highest performance out of that was actually from the south part of the district. And again, you had 62% who believed that the proposed levy would benefit students, small businesses, and the community. So this really sets the expectation that people really do think that this dollar per thousand applied to these education initiatives will have benefits to the community at large and the people that they know. And I think that this bodes pretty well for the measure. Again, we identified areas of critical resistance to kind of hone the window. And again, keep in mind that we're not talking generally now. We have identified a price point at $1 per thousand. And so how we're framing this for the median home at $300,000 of assessed value, this is a $300 cost or $25 a month. And so we've parsed out this question a handful of ways just to understand what generates what type of response. And we see that the question that basically says asking our community to pay for things the school should already be doing, that $300 is a steep price, who agreed with that. That was the highest, I would say, messaging, the oppositional messaging and still, it only came in at about 48% support. or agreement, because basically we tag on and say, I'm a no on this measure, and you had 48% support. Again, none of these came above 50%. And again, I see a lot of districts where these numbers exceed 50%. In some cases, very significantly exceed 50%. In no instance did I see, any one of these questions that talked about the cost and people and an adverse reaction to it. I never saw an instance where the response to that exceeded 50%. And so again, it informs my feeling that you've got an opportunity for success. Now, I don't think the ceiling is 55% anymore. I think it's probably around 53%. But as Dr. Cook mentioned, he did not want to leave money on the table, and that meant, we might sacrifice a few votes to get the most investment that we could get. But you see the responses here to the cost questions. To me, I'm looking at the highest ones, around 48%. What that means is you still have 52% who did not agree with that. So you've got an opportunity for success. And then these are the program supports. These were we asked. It was between the informed ballot number 1 and informed ballot number 2 when that support number jumped from 52.5% to 56%. This is what we talked about and then asked people to render that informed opinion. So we talked about enhanced elective offerings in music, art, tech, business, and languages, recruitment and retention of quality teachers and support staff, improving skill-based career pathways. I think had we changed the language to basically say improve career and technical ed, that number probably would have been 10 points higher. Support for struggling students, protecting class sizes and advanced academic offerings for students. People really like what's in the local option levy proposal. They really do. And so I think you've got a good marriage here of at least the service offerings. So again, recommendations, coming from this survey, I think we've identified a price point at $1 that is going to is probably the very furthest the district could go. I'm not sure that you could move an inch. I think you've probably gained maximum value with opportunity to be successful at $1. And so what I think really stood out from the survey is there needs to be at this point a real emphasis on the features and benefits that add to the educational offerings and experiences. People want to feel like if they're spending money, they are moving forward. People do not like to spend money to run on a treadmill. They want to spend money to feel like they're really advancing toward an objective or gaining something significant. And so the objective of the district is you're really going to need to focus on the features and benefits and how it moves the community forward and moves the students forward. Obviously, we think a emphasis on career and technical education and class size benefits are your two leading offerings. I think everything flows from those leading items. Emphasis on benefits to students throughout the district. That is, everybody benefits. No one is left behind in this package. The benefits are extended throughout the district. And then the emphasis on that is not just good for students, it's good for the community and it's good for the local businesses as young students are prepared to learn, they're prepared to contribute, and that the community benefits. And so those community benefits, people really buy into this notion. That's not true in every place, but it is certainly true in Bend and Lapine, and it needs to be really front and center in the messaging. It's my assessment that the proposed measure does present a reasonable opportunity for success. I'm not saying you're guaranteed success, I think that some of that is predicated on a May election. I am a much bigger fan of May elections for these types of asks than I am for November elections. But I think that you're probably working, I think you have a realistic opportunity to get to about 53% support. And, you know, I think that that's the ceiling that you're working with. And I think an effective campaign can certainly get you there. Again, I'm not saying it will. I'm just saying you have I think you could expect a reasonable opportunity to succeed. And I think that that's it, Scott. And so, yes, questions. So any questions now? I'm happy to answer.
I'd like to qualify this, that these are just questions for JL. We still have some more slides to go through, so just in case you have questions for him.
Just a few more. Any questions on the survey data? I know it was a lot of numbers, a lot of information. We have a few more weeks to take a look at this and have you go take a deeper dive if you have some follow-up questions for us that you want to reach out to us. But anything while we have JL with us.
JL, on slide 25 versus slide 28, can you help me understand the difference between the if you knew numbers and those percentages? I think that that means that those are the pass rate, like the impact on the pass rate, whereas the program support ones are just things they would support in the levy. Is that right? I'm just trying to understand the difference in the numbers between those two.
Perfect, thank you. And sometimes that's the peril of having a very high level presentation. So let me go to the 25, if you will, Scott. So the if you knew battery of questions basically asked the respondent, if you knew that the proposal would do this, would you support or oppose the proposal? And so the if you knew is really meant to isolate one piece of information and to judge and to quantify actually how that one piece of information affects a voting decision. So when we ask if you knew that the proposal would add, for instance, career and technical education in high schools, the support for the measure with that piece of knowledge, you had 68% of people say, well, I would support the measure. Okay, and so the if you knew is really meant to really call into question how people make a voting decision based on one piece of information. And it helps you understand what your most potent pieces of the local option are. And so you understand what your strongest components, because you're looking for those that basically move the needle higher against that 49% initial finding. And so you get a sense of what people really, really like. Now, in the question 28, let me read the, this is framed just differently. And so at the beginning of the survey, I'll read you how this was prefaced. The following are the Ben Lapine Schools priorities that the proposed local option levy would fund. For each, indicate if knowing this makes you much more positive, somewhat more positive, neither positive nor negative, somewhat more negative, or much more negative about the measure. And so what you had is the 6 offerings, and you had people basically, and we basically, the responses that were much more positive and somewhat more positive, we grouped in the positive category, and similarly for the negative. And so what you got a sense there, it's a different way to ask the question, but I think they all generally supported the same purpose, and that is, do people feel good about these types of programs being included in the measure? And you got very positive response, 60% plus on all of them. So it was just a different way of asking the question.
Great, thank you.
Quick question. So unless I'm missing something, this seems overwhelmingly positive in the direction where we want to head, I think. And I'm looking at the recommendations, and I appreciate the recommendations. I'm just curious, and this is emphasis, emphasis, emphasis. Is there anything that you're maybe cautious, an advice on words of caution that maybe I'm missing here, or that you would strongly recommend we pay attention to?
There is. I would be very cautious about talking about things that people might perceive that the district should be doing already. And so I would really parse out how you talk about things and look at it through the community's lens. And that is, shouldn't the district already be doing this? There was a question, and I will look it up just for an example, with respect to if you knew the proposed local option levy would improve district systems to more effectively track student attendance and academic progress. That feels like something that, why wouldn't the district be doing that already? Now, you might have a reason that this, how we plan on doing is much better, but I would be very, very focused on how this moves people forward, how community members and students in particular will discernibly benefit. And so that's my caution. Don't get engaged in things that people might perceive as the district should be doing this already.
Thank you.
And I would like, again, I want to level set expectations. While I agree that the findings are generally positive, keep in mind that elections are, they all take on a life of their own. I have been in many elections where we've done this survey, and the measure gets swamped by perhaps another political event or something that happens that just takes people down a certain current. And so I think you got a window of success at about 53%. Would I feel better if it was 55 or 56? Yeah. But, $1 is not a small ask. And so I think you need to understand that I think that this dollar price point is probably the sweet spot where you're getting maximum value, but you are risking a little bit, your ceiling's 53%, which means there's not a lot of room for error.
I think the one data point I was most concerned about, I don't think you voiced over, or if you did, I missed it, on slide 20, just the trust district to spend money wisely was lower than 50%. And to me, that's if it's close and I'm trying to decide if I'm gonna vote for something or not, my trust is important. So I was just curious if you have any thoughts on that and how it may have compared to surveys you've done.
Because that number gets misconstrued so often. And let me tell you, at 46%, it might as well be 80 compared to most surveys that I see that are actually between 25 and 35. So there is let me just say 46 was one of the higher numbers I've ever seen.
Great, thank you for that context.
Any other questions for JL? He's been on with us hanging on for a couple hours tonight, and if we feel like we've asked everything and we've seen everything we want tonight, I will cut him loose, so.
Yeah, thank you.
We good?
Thank you so much. Appreciate all of the research.
Thank you. Thank you, JL. It's been great to work with his team, been very responsive and helpful in getting us through those 2 rounds of surveys, so. All right, let's move on. Let's get caught up here, first of all. So, as I mentioned earlier, we've taken what we've heard from our voters now, from internally and externally, from a lot of feedback over the past couple of years and all those phases of public input, and we tried to synthesize it for you in a proposed ballot title. And under state law, the ballot language has 3 parts, which you can see here. The caption is just 10 words. The question is 20 words, and then you get a summary of 175 words. These are the 3 parts that we've drafted in your packet tonight. We will also have an opportunity to write a longer explanatory statement of up to 500 words. That doesn't appear on the ballot, but it appears in the county voters pamphlet. All right, so here's what we've drafted. The caption, 5-year local option levy to improve, support student learning. A tight 10 words, and hyphenated words count as 2 words, in case you're wondering. Then our question, shall the district levy $1 per $1,000 assessed value for 5 years, beginning 2024-25, to bridge funding gap, support priorities? The second sentence here, which does not count toward our 20-word limit, is legally required language. That's to inform the voters of the potential effect if this levy is approved. And then
Can
finally,
I ask you a question on that?
Yeah, let me go back.
Sorry, because when I read it, it's like, it's confusing to me. Does that mean, are we telling them that it could increase over the current 3%? Are we telling them that it's going to increase a total of 3% on their property taxes? What are we telling them
It
there?
means that the total for the school district could increase by more than 3% because of the addition of the local option levy, the 3% that we would naturally see in the growth of our permanent levy rate. Does that make sense?
No. Would a resident's property taxes increase by more than 3% overall, like in total?
That's the caveat that is being added to this, is that statutorily, it's capped at 3%, and this potentially, this statement is legally required to be added in the case that it's possible that this could also impact their property taxes so that they would increase overall more than 3%, which is beyond the legal cap. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I will just say, thank you for that. I find the current language confusing because it sounds like it's an additional 3% as opposed to being more than.
Oh, okay, now I understand what you're saying.
You
To increase by more than 3% rather than to increase over the current. Okay, all right.
Because ultimately what you were trying to say is, put it where the goats get it. Make it easy. Don't make it complex, because people are going to start thinking, like, what are they trying to increase? Is it going to hurt me? Like, most taxpayers are not going to, and most targeted voters who vote the most are going to not understand that language.
Yeah.
It's confusing, yeah.
We definitely have time to take a look at that and consult the statutory expectations on how to frame that, or phrase it.
It's almost
Great,
like
thank you.
make it where a 4th grader can understand it. Yep. That's the common. That's what. Yeah, it should be. Yeah, make where a 4th grader can understand it. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Okay, and then finally, I want to show you, and I think I'll quickly read this because I think it's important that everyone watching hears this as well. The summary, which spans two slides here. The summary is, the Ben Lapine School District is unable to fully fund student-focused programs and services with revenues received under the state funding model. This proposed 5-year local option levy would allow the district to bridge the funding gap and dedicate resources to important programs and services, including the following: protect and maintain class sizes, strengthen and add career technical education pathways, recruit and retain teachers and support staff, increase advanced academic offerings for students, improve support systems for struggling students, enhance elective offerings in music, art, technology, business, world languages. I think the et cetera is implied there. And then, continuing, passage of the levy would help the district focus on strategies that prepare students for lifelong learning and career success. The district serves over 17,000 students in 33 schools. And then again, it repeats some of the financial information, the dollar per thousand rate of assessed value, the estimated cost for a home with a median assessed value. Currently, it's $238,750, so it'd be it's easy math with a rate of $1 per thousand. So it's about $239 a year. which is it's consistent with what we just talked about and reviewed with the survey work of about $20 a month. And then the levy would provide approximately $23 million in the first year. Again, that's a tight, I think we're right around 170 words there. So we can do a little wordsmithing with that, but we have to definitely watch that, so.
One word there, passage of the levy would help the district focus on, I think strategies can come off as kind of ethereal, maybe like activities or something that feels more active or tactical. And then I'm just confused because the survey seemed to ask about reducing class sizes, and this bullet is protect and maintain class sizes. So which is it, and are people going to be more supportive of maintaining or improving, reducing? So just wanted to clarify.
Yeah. You want to take that one, or should I? It has evolved over the course of the two surveys. We kind of wanted to test it and talk about it two different ways and see how people responded, but if Dr. Cook would like to add a little.
Yeah, I think it's important. Reducing class sizes over the entire district is a very expensive and a very direct statement. Whereas reducing class sizes, protecting classes, we have very favorable class sizes right now. And so in some cases, it wouldn't necessarily be further reducing some of those class sizes. It would be protecting those and maintaining small class sizes where we've focused on, and to some extent, it's message, it's staying on message. We've invested our SIA dollars in reducing class sizes and adding additional staff in some of our most highly impacted schools. And so it's continuing to ensure that that's going to be able to happen, along with the fact that we're also talking about maintaining our efforts as we come off this ESSER cliff and working on funding over the next several years. This is important. And so I think I would suggest that it's more important for us to say protecting class size as a value and maintaining class sizes and reducing where we can. I'm not confident that saying reducing class sizes further from where we already have made that commitment since 2018 would be an effective message when we started looking at the analytics 3 years later.
Okay, I get it. We're making a decision based on a survey that I think said reducing or cutting, so just want to, yeah.
And I think we did pivot in the second survey to using language that was more consistent with where we're at now. But, and again, we will be able to go into a lot more detail with that explanatory statement for those who read the voters pamphlet, and of course all the various ways we intend to communicate and engage with the community before Election Day.
Yeah, and on slide 28, it does say protecting class size.
So we will return in 2 weeks with a motion, with language for a motion for the board to consider, to refer this to the ballot for May 21st. Excuse me. March 1st is our goal to get that language filed with the county. It's the start of a 7-day challenge period, a public challenge period. That's an opportunity, if we need it, to refine the final language and make sure it complies with all the requirements. So a little bit of the timeline on the screen. You can see that a lot needs to happen in March. And then I would hope by sometime in that time frame in March, we will already have started a lot of our public engagement around what this is and why it's important. But that'll certainly continue when we return from spring break. And then ballots mailed to voters May 1st. So it's tight. It's a tight time frame.
I like how he looks at me for this last slide. With this information, with both surveys, we believe that the time is right, and our team's recommendation is that $1 per thousand is the right number and that we would propose that this board consider signing off on a recommendation for a levy to go to the voters in May at that rate per thousand, and giving the voters the opportunity to make their choice.
Thank you. We will now move on to, thank you so much, Scott. Loved all of the information. It's really exciting. And we have a big decision in 2 weeks. We'll now move on to item number 10, which is the superintendent's report.
Mine will be quick. Just 3 things I really want to draw attention to. I just want to celebrate 2 things. Well, actually, I'll even celebrate the 3rd thing. The first one is the Lunar New Year celebration that we had the other day. My gosh, was it such a wonderful celebration. Just a lot of engagement and students making declarations and of what they want for their New Year experience. And we're talking big kids and little kids, and doing it on the mic because if you do it in public, that's going to give it a better shot to come true, and just a great opportunity and a celebration for that event. And secondly, just shout out to our Black Family Student Union, their booth in support of African American History Month that we are having in February. Just a lot of engagement, a lot of good work going on there, and very proud of that work. And I just want to emphasize, Laura talked about it, the efforts to elevate student voice across the district is such a priority right now. I just feel like that's a good example of how that's happening. And then my last one, it's a celebration. We are eyeball deep in an admin hiring season right now. We're in the middle of still the hiring process for the deputy superintendent position to replace Laura after she leaves in June. And we are also eyeball deep in principal hiring positions as well. So we have several interim principals that are competing for their jobs right now, and we have one open position at North Star that's underway. And we are, our systems are improving every single year, and I'm just grateful for the engagement and that commitment that we have, and a lot of good work going on in that area. And so stay tuned as we continue that process.
Thank you so much. We'll now move into item number 11, which is the board chair report. Mine is very quick as well. First, I just wanted to apologize for not being able to be here at our last board meeting due to my flight cancellation. I work really hard not to miss a meeting, and apologies for not being here. I have been able to follow up on some of the discussion and have been working with Superintendent Cook around our strategic planning process and making sure that we are providing an inclusive, a fully inclusive process, and also incorporating board voice, because ultimately we want to have a strategic plan that aligns to the board goals that the whole board supports. And so that work is underway, and we'll bring it forward in March for a board discussion. And then the second thing I just wanted to note is that the short session is starting right now, and one of the things that this board of directors has really advocated for with our legislators, and I'll say it again tonight, is that we really want the state to follow suit with the federal guidelines and lower the threshold for direct eligibility to provide universal meals from 40% to 25%. I had the opportunity last night, just coincidence, to speak with Mindy, who is the nutrition services manager at High Desert Middle School, and the volume increase that they saw in their kitchen and the meals, she said it was phenomenal. It has made such a difference to provide those universal meals. So I really hope that our state legislators will provide what we need to take this not just to our 22 schools, but to be able to do it district-wide, because I think that's something our district can do if Oregon is willing to follow suit like the federal government has done. And that's the end of my report. We are now moving into item number 12, which is director comments, and we'll start with Director Olson.
I'm a little overwhelmed. So I really have no direct comments to make, other than thank you to Amy and Honey for being here. I mean, Abby, I'm sorry, for being here and for speaking up. Thank you.
I just want to echo that. Thank you so much for being here, Honey and Abby. also want to express great appreciation that we could have all our SROs, or most all of them here. I'm so grateful for folks who are working on building relationships with our students, our SROs, and modeling career opportunities, as well as huge shout out for our classified staff, and that recognition is so critical. They make our schools work and function, and without them, big impact on some of our most vulnerable kids. So thank you.
Yeah, I'll be brief. I was going to say the same thing. Thank you to Honey and Abby, and thank you to our SROs and classified staff. My mom was a school secretary for 20 years, and one of my daughters in particular comes home talking about the secretary at her school as much as she does the teachers. So very clear that they play an incredible role in relationships and operations across every aspect of our work. So thank you.
Nothing from me.
Thank you so much for your voice. And I will say, fun to read the classified, proclamation since I'm married to a classified employee. Yay.
Yes, first and foremost, I want to thank the students for being here. Thanks for SROs. Thanks for classified staff and working all the work. But the main thing I want to talk about is Black History Month. I don't celebrate Black History Month just during this month. I celebrate it all year long, because I think it's American history, not just celebrated one time. When PhD Dr. Carter G. Woodson started this in 1926, and it was Negro Week. And actually now it's like Black History Month. The thing I love also about it is an opportunity for everyone to engage. Many of the schools that I've been able to go to visit, to celebrate what's going on, seeing all the things in the hall has been phenomenal. That is a drastic change from when I first started being a part of all this, and I'm really glad that the administrators in the buildings are starting to do this. And one little known piece of history, just to give you your Black History Month history for today, and talking about the free lunches. The free lunch programs were actually started by the Black Panthers in Oakland, and then it branched out to Chicago, New York, and many other regions. And this was started by high school and college students. It wasn't started by our elders. It was started by people the same age as you, trying to find ways for them to continue to let students' voice be heard. Unfortunately, it was disbanded by J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI because they thought that they were trying to teach students to hate white people, and that was not the case. And guess what? The current free lunch program that we have now actually stemmed from it. So they stole the idea instead of actually giving them credit. So today we're giving them credit. So I just want to continue to let us know and celebrate the various things that African Americans have contributed to American history. Let's continue to celebrate that, because if you find out as many things that you use on a common day basis, like the pen Steve has as a hand was created by a Black person, you'll understand the importance of what the contributions Black Americans have contributed to this country and to this world. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I have 3 appreciations. The one just flew out of my head, so hopefully it's going to come back. My first appreciation is to Janet Bojanowski. We were having a conversation a couple weeks ago about making our education center more welcoming for families, and we talked about wanting to have seating areas when people come in so that they can wait. She ran with it. So if you haven't seen our new lobby in this building, it is phenomenal. And thank you, Janet, for doing that. And Marta. Okay, both. Shoot, why didn't I write this down? I'm getting old. I really am. Oh, yes, sorry. Thank you. The second thing I wanted to appreciate is actually, there's been a lot of challenges sometimes with athletics this year. And I just had an opportunity to really see something beautiful last night, and that was at Summit High School. I was able to watch the freshmen and the varsity boys basketball games, as well as the dance crew and the cheerleaders. But the most special thing was during their halftime, they have all the littles go out and play basketball. And it was just such a great family event to be able to see the families of 6-year-old kids all the way to 18-year-old kids, all there to watch together. And it really felt like community. And so I just want to appreciate the work that goes into creating those types of community events within those athletic spaces. And that is going to be it, because I can't remember my third. Hold on, I'll use it in 2 weeks. With that said, number 13, our next meeting is a work session scheduled for February 27th, 2024, and our next regular business meeting is scheduled for March 12th, 2024.